The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of this protracted experience of death, and I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent power, source, and force of love and creation forever. What's happening? Benton here. Last day of the days off. Back to the old grind tomorrow. Before I forget, on my post tab is a Sam Hyde video that I would encourage, especially folks my age, the boomers, like it or not, we're boomers. Merge, uh, you know, don't resist the boomer. It is what it is. But yes, hang on. I think the truck's going to start. Yeah, truck started. Charging up the batteries. Now it's going to run for 2 hours. Let me see. Yeah, that'll work out good. 740 to 940-ish. Charge up the old batteries. And Sam Hyde's a genius, like it or not. He's an artistic genius, creative genius. So is David Cho, the Asian fella that shows up on my feed from time to time. Regardless of how annoying their personalities are or how they come across. And Sam is about the only person that, all types of people, if America's divided into three, Republican, Democrat, and other, just about everybody will be confused or give me shit for keeping up with Sam Hyde's career and art. Then David Cho can be a bit confusing until then he'll every once in a while he'll take a picture of some of his art and put it on, his posts or whatever. And you're like, oh, that's right. He is one of the great, perhaps the greatest living visual artist. It is what it is. But anyway, especially for the older folks, myself included, to be able to understand what's going on, culturally, and which is always tied up in the youth. It's always about the youth. And Gen X has this big problem where Gen X is forever young. So Gen X will never be able to psychologically accept that they themselves are no longer young. Perpetual, to be perpetually youthful, right? And that's not entirely a bad thing if the person, is somewhat youthful, and I suffer with this in my own way, but something I've identified about Gen X. And in some ways, the victory of the spirit of what I am is to have never created offspring to then sacrifice to Moloch and fill their heads full of lies, like my head was filled with lies, your head was filled with lies when you were young. This is undeniable. And however any of us feels about our community growing up, oh, well, it was good in all of these various ways. Not saying it wasn't. It was based on a pack of lies. There's no denying it. That is what happened. You were lied to every day of your childhood, as was I, and as was my parents, okay, and everybody's parents lied to them. Everybody's parents were lied to, not as a justification. This is the pattern that repeats over time. So realize when boomers say, oh, here's the problems with this generation. Hey, what about the problems with your generation, boomer or Gen X? Why are you worried about the youth? Do you think they don't know what their own problems are? Do you think they're not coping with their own problems? Why are you making it worse for them? Oh, well, you sacrifice them to Moloch if you have children, right? Like you were sacrificed to Moloch. You filled their head full of lies and sent them off to serve a bunch of uh, government officials, the military, patriotism, banks, corporations, hedge funds, scumbags of all descriptions. You delivered what is supposed to be, uh, you know, the highest the highest substance and value possible, right? Uh, we are the world, we are the children, teach them well and let them lead the way. That's a mockery. That's the realm has a sense of humor. That's what that is. It's mocking you, right? And again, none of this is to attack the listener. This is not about guilt, fear, and shame. That's all dead anyway. It's about, I don't know any other way out of these problems or out of these conundrums because they're all self-inflicted wounds. Yes, the individual was put behind the 8 ball by being inserted into this matrix in this way at this time, right? Guess what? Same thing with the youth. And do you really think you would be any different? Oh, because it was 1987 when you were 12 instead of 2027 as it will be next year, right? Because you were, 13 and whatever works out mathematically, right? Oh, you're different and better and special. Why? Because maybe when you hit the workforce, the economic cycles were different. And maybe what suited Moloch's machine was to reward nuclear family, and the idea of a patriarchy or a male dominated society, right? Yeah, so what? If you were 13, you'd be coping with what the 13-year-olds are coping with. Do you really think you'd be much different? Right. And it's easy to blame a generation. Well, I remember Gen X. I remember the Gen X propaganda. I remember the head shaking and the laments of the older folks directed towards my generation. Right. Not helpful. Not helpful. What happened to all this "we are the world" crap? And at the end of the day, the prevailing attitude is shut the fuck up and go slave away for a bunch of bankers, rich folks, corporations, the government. Sell your ass to these entities. Basically sell your ass to Satan. To be able to bootstrap, put food in your mouth. Right? I'd rather eat out of the garbage. I'd rather eat out of the garbage. Now, again, I'm employed as a contractor on a 1099. For however long that lasts. At what point does the government start contacting my employers like, hey, what's up with this guy? He doesn't, we can't find any record of him, in his taxes and such. And at some point, my employer will probably be like, yeah, what's up with that? It's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can either keep driving a truck for you until the government maybe shows up and wants its cut, or I guess I'll leave the company now. I mean, it's really up to you, but I have no plans to begin paying taxes, And in fact, the only pressing matter for me on my last full day off is, do I really want to drive my happy ass to an ATM somewhere to take out enough cash to keep my account below a certain threshold that I suspect might, trigger some sort of automated signal to the government, right? It's funny how the issues that are plaguing society apparently around affordability and cash have the opposite problem. It's like, look how quickly all this I can't get the cash out quick enough, right? And at the end of the day, does it matter? I'm taking enough out bit by bit, you know, and it's Zimbabwe money. I can go however many $20 bills I've got, uh, you know, access to in the moment. It's damn near Zimbabwe money at this point, right? It's like, oh yeah, it kind of looks impressive, but look at what will this actually buy, right? How long can I live on this? So realistically, does it fucking matter if I wake up one day and they've zeroed out my account? Or no, they're loving and tolerant and generous, the government. They'll probably just take 2/3 of whatever. They'll leave me with 1/3 of my money, right? Probably. And they'll act like they're doing me a favor for not, imprisoning me. Well, shit, I might prefer y'all put that on my commissary. Just go ahead and put me in the federal prison. And we just put that on my books, right? They got these tablets and all of these ways of making money off of prisoners. Surely the for-profit prison system would prefer if I had access to some funds in there, right? They'll charge me by the day. Some prisons charge the prisoners to incarcerate them. Why not? But yeah, that Sam Hyde video with Jesse Lee Peterson, genius, the way that was cut together. And it's from a longer podcast that I tried to watch. And I find most of Sam's podcasts to be, like most podcasts, damn near unwatchable. And if y'all notice this, that, much of the content is now it's unwatchable. And for some reason, I installed the Drudge Report app on my phone and it's Trump approval 35%. Who cares? Right? Who cares? As a reader of the newspaper going back to the 1980s, I'm familiar with the president's approval ratings. Almost always, it's like 42% and below at almost at all times. Of course, after 9/11 or whatever, George W. with his cod piece. George W.'s cod piece might have crept up to 55% approval, right? You want to talk about Biden's poopy diaper? What about George W. Bush's cod piece? And an attempt at dominant body language, right? A simian attempt at dominant body language, cod piece, right? Mission accomplished. Yeah, go ahead and sign off on that, Republicans, because that's what you're accepting. This idea that everything that happens in American society, just call it Democrat. Okay, well, go ahead and print out a poster of W. Bush's cod piece and mission accomplished and put that on your wall, and then I'll accept it. Anybody that will put that up in their home and will own that image, okay, fair enough. There are people who believe at that level. I'm more of your Pat Buchanan style. It's like, yeah, I certainly was raised in a way where I have my own conservative leanings, but I remember reading Pat Buchanan in the newspaper, frequent, accurate critic of the Republican Party, right? Intelligent, intellectual fella. Give me that flavor of Republican, and I'm not going to join up, but I'll hear you out at that point. But yeah, check that video out if you would. That will, and the parts that you find confusing or off-putting, yeah, I also find them off-putting. And because I practice open-mindedness, at a certain point when they're going down these various rabbit holes of content and what the youth are looking at on the internet, yeah, I find it disturbing also. That's the point. You're supposed to find it disturbing. It's just, it reminds me of when my father's parents, my grandparents on my dad's side, when in the early to mid 80s, when MTV was still new, at least in my town, when my grandparents had cable. So every time they left the living room, we turned the TV to MTV. And every time they came in the room, they took one look at MTV and immediately said, change the channel. And I realized later on that's because that fast editing style with all the quick cuts was still so new, their brains couldn't handle it. See, I understand on some level that our brains can't really handle some of the stuff in that clip. So I believe Sam and his team have presented it in a way where it's, you're seeing just enough of how disturbing society's become. But then the knee-jerk reaction of calling it Democrat. Well, the youth ain't Democrat. I hate to break it to you. Right. But they're also not Republican either. They're something entirely different. And it goes back to this idea of this influencer clavicular and the looks maxing. And, I forgot to link the article, but it's on Drudge, or you can, Google. You can probably just Google looks maxing Atlantic and it'll come up. It was an article from the Atlantic, but it's talking about the idea that because what Drudge is trying to do is attach this looks maxing movement to MAGA, but then, a lot of these people do like Trump, but it's because of the more Chad-like aspects. But they also, Clavicular said he would vote for Gavin Newsom over Vance because he said Newsom mogs Vance. Well, old folks don't even know what that means. Well, I know what mogging is because I was around when that term originated. That's from the pickup artist culture. It's a mog, alpha male other guy. So when people would go out and what they call sarging, and they would, because this was the olden days before social media and before the prevalence of texting. So men who wanted to, what was known as fuck and chuck a bunch of broads, pretty much had no choice but to get a bunch of phone numbers back in the day. It's like, okay, how do we do this? Not we collectively, but how is this done? And so it was to systematize, codify, and learn and teach a system of getting enough phone numbers to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to have 2 dates this weekend. And, I need to, by Tuesday or Wednesday, I need to have all this scheduled, right? And to be able to do that, the guy needs probably a minimum of 10 phone numbers. Okay, how do we get to 10 phone numbers? And so people would compare notes. They would tell their stories because, when a fella starts talking to a chick in public, a cold approach, well, other dudes will often see this and insert themselves into the mix, or she will even bring other dudes into the mix at times. It's like, then we need a system of how do we describe these other males? So that's where AMOG came from, alpha male other guy, right? Well, that's now morphed into mogging, because remember, the youth has grown up with internet culture. And so what's relevant to them is that because he's handsome and in shape and tall, Gavin Newsom's a Chad. It doesn't matter what his politics are. And by the way, the broads mostly prefer the lefty politics, like it or not. That's just what it is. And the dudes who fancy themselves Chads, do you think they give a shit? They're just trying to get pussy. They don't give a fuck about the politics. And so they refer to Vance as subhuman, as a subhuman because he's obese, right? And he's ugly. Well, Trump is obese. Now I would say he's objectively handsome. Now he's old, but he was not a bad looking dude back in the day. But Again, male looks weren't at such a premium back in the day. Meanwhile, when he used to go on Howard Stern and all these TV shows, Larry King, remember Trump was all over the TV in the 80s, a Democrat, blue-blooded billionaire from Manhattan that supposedly made his bones getting concrete poured in Manhattan. And you just go watch some documentaries, read some books, and realize, it takes a damn nearly it's almost a miracle level undertaking to get concrete poured in Manhattan, like for real. This is not Republicans doing all of this. Okay, now that Donald Trump is beyond the laying of concrete phase, well, he's free to go be a Republican now. He could not an option in Manhattan back in the day. He couldn't be a Republican back then, especially once W and Cheney came onto the scene. It was a fucking wrap. Kidding me? Which seems somewhat paradoxical because, there was fervor around, the circling of the wagons of America was attacked and all of this, but that psyop, it clearly wore off. And so back to the genius of Sam Hyde, it's his ability and willingness to sort of, the only way out is through style, to maneuver through and find his way through this underworld hell pit of modernity, perhaps as presented by Paul Joseph Watson, right? This modernity, but in a non-judgmental, non-critical way, just like, oh, this is what the youth is into, right? And once the anger wore off, I don't know if y'all have noticed, old Benton skews a little slightly emo, especially when it comes to music. I've never not been a lover of music. To this day, I find music that I very much enjoy. And I decided I'm just not going to be one of these old people who's like, oh, there's no good music anymore. Bullshit. My dad was probably saying that in the 90s. Meanwhile, fast forward 20 to 30 years, what do you think he listens to now? Fucking 90s music, right? Why do I need to wait 20 to 30 years to listen to whatever's cool now? I just listen to it now. And so to understand and accept the youth, guess what? They'll probably make you some music recommendations, So when I'm over dropping donos on Tarman, over on his channel, it's like, yeah, he deserves money for putting up with my 50-year-old ass, right? And every once in a while he interviews some kid who's making music on his computer, right? And I found an entire album. It's just some dude, some 20-something-year-old dude making music on his computer. It's fucking badass. Well, guess what? We didn't have access to that in the 90s. Somebody had to get a record deal. Somebody had to get, the fucking synagogue of Satan had to figure out a way to make a nickel. Mm-hmm. Not now. So I like to try to err on the side of accepting the youth, meet them where they live, right? Of course, I don't hang out with the youth or have anything to do with them. That's not my point. It's the, and not trying to be like that. Hello, fellow children. The Steve Buscemi with the skateboard and the backwards hat. It's like, when I'm around people my age and older, I can tell that they recognize that I have a youthful fucking vibe for my age. I have no desire to hang out with young, just none whatsoever, but I'm able to listen to them and interact with them and at times learn from them, believe it or not, and which is humility as frequently as it's a lack of humility to just refuse to listen to the youth and to think, well, I can't learn anything from them, because very much a boomer thing is this idea of, well, if somebody has 30 years of experience, they automatically know a bunch of shit that you can't possibly know because you don't have 30 years of experience. Well, bullshit. Bullshit. So therefore, why would they listen to someone younger than them? And, I've been around people 20 years older than me, and I know that I know way more about certain things than they do. Guess what? They won't listen to me because It's not in their world. I can't possibly know anything that they don't know because they have so much more experience. Well, that's a lack of humility is all that is. It's them lacking humility. It's not my problem. Like, yeah, fuck you. I'll just keep it moving. Their loss. And so that's to crystallize. That is to become old. So in some ways, Gen X sort of given this gift in a way, the double-edged sword of forever young. Well, better figure out how to avoid crystallizing and taking a form, right? And actually, these kids don't want to work. Good. They probably are better than you in that regard. Did you really benefit from slaving away to make a bunch of rich folks richer? Now, I understand you can lie to yourself and tell yourself a bunch of lies. Did you really benefit other than, yeah, you met your obligation, you raised your family, you paid the bills? Beyond that, did you really benefit as a result of these things? Right. Can you be honest with me and honest with yourself and say, yeah, that was to my benefit? And if you had it to do all over again, would you fucking be like, yeah, sign me up to make rich people richer? That's great. No, fuck that. Oh, Gen Z doesn't want to work. Good. I respect that. Why should they? What's in it for them? Right? At least there's something in it for me and my weird ass to drive a truck and live at a big rig. And, the company can't ever understand that I want to just fucking be in the truck on my home time. Yeah, I'm sleeping. What do you think I'm doing in here? I'm sleeping. I'll hoop and holler on a live stream for a couple of hours at some point. I'll go to Whole Foods and get my new phone, which I have my phone. It's all set up. That process is way easier than I was anticipating. Actually, I thought that was going to be like a whole day to get that working. But either way, because you remember for the NPC normie, time off has to be associated with, well, we're having fun, we're doing activities, right? It's got to be, who would want to go sit around an Indiana truck stop on the outskirts of Indianapolis, right? Well, it's like part of this is I don't have a residence by choice, and I've gone as long as I can go without getting a new phone because realistically it's just the radios, but I'll get into that. I'll get into the hot phone. I know y'all love the hot cell phone talk that I engage in from time to time, so we'll move on to that shortly, but that's always there. I'm on a roll. None of this is advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. This is me like sort of purging whatever needs to be purged, that's all this is. It's a purge, to dirge. There's your word of the day, DIRG, because for every once in a while, Benton repeatedly uses a word and then it becomes the hot shit of the day. It's diabolical. I've been saying that for decades. And that's the hotness. That dirge, DIRGE. How about that? I wanted Starscream back in the day when I demanded that my father buy me a transformer. I extorted my father for a transformer, and they were out of Starscream was sold out, so I had to settle for Dirge. Fucking Decepticon. Already had Optimus Prime, of course. I don't think I ever had a Megatron. Megatron kind of sucked, though. It actually just, the toy, it had problems and defects. That's not the point. More of a Shockwave type of fella, anyway. But doesn't matter. If anybody doesn't know, that's one of the other Transformers that turns into a gun, Shockwave. All right, now I'm getting lost in my own sauce. And again, like, if you're around the age of 50, we're the perfect age, man. Like, we're the best of both worlds. Now, I have an advantage in many ways. The music. I was an early adopter of a lot of the music. I was a very early adopter of the internet. I've always been a little, attracted to visual art and all these movies. I saw Akira. I rented Akira on fucking VHS in 19 fucking, not that early, but I at least knew what anime was. And I'm from Arkansas, for fuck's sake. So some of this was just like a minor miracle that I was renting Akira on VHS in like 1993 or whatever. And I lived in a college town in Arkansas, which actually the fact that some of this stuff was even available in the first place. It's like I got made fun of by a millennial on the old Chalk Body Outline Discord because I liked the band Jawbreaker. Well, like how did I start listening to Jawbreaker? I was at the used CD store in my college town in Arkansas, and I just the name of the band and the album cover looked kind of interesting, so I paid $5 for Bivouac, the album, and listened to it and thought it was cool. I mean, this is not, had nothing to do with identity, because in Arkansas, I couldn't find enough other people that were into cool music, or there were some people in my dorm freshman year at U of Arkansas, and I tried to hang out with them that liked cool music. They were shitheads. They were hipsters. Looking back on it, I'm not a hipster. They were hipster doofuses, right? And they, got into drugs and all this. So I didn't really hang out with them. A bunch of weirdo hipster doofuses. I happen to be a little more with the jocks in a way, right? Oh, well, that's fucking out of bounds in their world, but it's fine. I don't care. Fuck them. Who cares? Fuck them. Anyway, I've kind of gotten off of wherever I started from, but rant over. I think I covered everything culturally, but I think it's important. I know it's important for the older folks to try to at least let the subconscious watch that Sam Hyde video and understand that your mind and your programming is going to reject a lot of what you're seeing. And then you're going to see parts of it and just say, oh, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. It doesn't fucking matter if it's Democrat. Because really what you're saying is non-conservative. Guess what? Everything having to do with the government and corporations is not conservative. Everything. There's nothing about a corporation or the government that's nothing, right? And so we're also seeing the path to politics and the leading of the people through the youth is the youth who will identify, a lot of the youth who will identify with Trump will also identify with Gavin Newsom. And yeah, I don't like any of these politicians. I hate to say it. I think the best you got's AOC and Gavin Newsom, and I think they're all jokes, right? Kamala was clearly a joke. I mean, there's just no, I listened to her concession speech. I could just go give a speech off the top of my head better than that. Like, I couldn't believe how bad. It's like, what even is this? I listened to the whole thing just out of curiosity, right? And yeah, I understand Hillary, one of the most unlikable people of all time. The lady can give a speech, yeah, I understand AOC, this and that. It's not even about the politics. They all more or less have the same politics. I don't know if y'all realize this, other than what they will espouse. And if you think these Republicans aren't up to a bunch of freaky deaky, weird, perverted sexual things behind the closed doors, you're out of your mind. Of course they are. Every single one of them. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Tom Cotton, the most obviously gay man I've ever laid my eyes on. He could be that Glenn Greenwald's fucking twin brother, right? You can see it in 2 seconds. This is a gay man, right? It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. But in the world of conservatism, all he's got to do is pretend to like women. And I don't know if he's married or not. I assume he is, but whatever. He's just got all he needs is a beard, right? And he's good to go. Charlie Kirk, that's a gay man. Like it or not, that's not a heterosexual man. And part of the sickness of the so-called right wing is, okay, let's have his widow up there on stage in some leather pants and have JD Vance paw at her. right? Because that's, that's good goddamned Americanism right there. Well, I do like actual conservatism. I like my women in a dress, motherfucker. And I'll paw at their waist in public, right? What? I don't want to see her ass. What? You know what I mean? Like, especially on stage in leather pants, and this is a conservative, right? And again, I'm not here to tell people what to do. Wear whatever you want. You know, it ain't about that for me. But you know, you want to talk about trad wives and so-called conservatism? Yeah. Why don't you actually live? And again, not you, the listener. Yeah, go ahead and live that. It's not possible because feminism pervades every aspect of society, including the Republican Party, including your church, including your school, including your home if you're married and raising children. Certainly, if your children are grown and raising children, that they all go to schools that are feminist. They all are going to go to a feminist workplace. That's just what it is, right? And again, part of truck driving is there ain't no feminism in this truck other than whatever feminism I allow to come into here. I don't know of any women that work at the trucking company. There's lady drivers certainly, but I don't know of any. Uh, imagine thinking one is a conservative and they've raised their children to be conservatives, and then they're going to go off to a job where they're in a corporate structure where some percentage of the management, the so-called C-suite, is going to be female. Right? Well, in my world, a man ain't a man got a woman for a boss. So, how in the world can I sign myself off to being supervised by a broad? So what? I can pay my bills? Well, fuck that. I'll go sleep in a ditch and not have bills. I mean, it's part of the reason I've lived the way I've lived. Right? Fuck you, money. Well, fuck you, money might just be, well, if it costs money, maybe I don't need it. Or maybe, God forbid, I'll actually live by what the Bible says that, and I'll trust through the yin of the yin and the yang. I'll trust and accept that whatever I need will be magically provided for me. Guess what? Almost 10 years of living out of a backpack was. I proved the hypothesis in my life. I lived in a way where just time after time, whatever I needed magically appeared. I mean, comically at times, just like, oh, look, there's that thing I need. It's just laying on the ground somewhere. Or somebody just happened to give it to me. Or, hey, here's somebody just randomly gave me $20. Oh, there's where I can go buy that thing I need. Right. That's happened so many times. I don't remember the specifics. At a certain point, I just gave up paying attention. Now, if I wanted something, I might not be able to get it. See, maybe not. It's like, yeah, I might have the money for a beer and a blunt, or I might not. So what? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But most of us in the old versions of Benton, we've signed off on a lifestyle of a keeping up with the Joneses, status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups, where we're going to have our subscription services. A 70-inch TV is, I don't know, what is that? What's a 75 or a 65-inch TV cost at Walmart? $500? I don't know. I haven't priced them, but, air-conditioned homes, right? All the modern conveniences. Everybody signed off on all of that. Well, that's to become dependent on that. Meanwhile, what is conservatism? It's Little House on the motherfucking prairie. Bootstrapping as you churn the fucking butter. You chop the firewood. You fucking ground you mill the grain or whatever the fuck it may be. You raise the crops. You till the soil. Right? We ain't about that life. Now, some of us are in the so-called truth community. Well, I'm not. I'm talking generally. Americans ain't about that life. And hell, we used to have a person around this channel, a generous donator, Razvan from Eastern Europe, that he grew up a peasant in Eastern Europe. Well, he proves to you that's an inferior way to live in the modern sense by he moved to an urban area, presumably, and drives a truck. And he's going to, retire, and maybe he will retire back to the farm or whatever. I don't fucking know. But what's he doing now? Right? Anything but peasant level farming, because that shit sucks. Nobody's going to choose that. So in some way, it was, I chose to take it to the streets and sort of, I understood on some level the upsides and the benefits to a difficult lifestyle in certain ways. But to have access to productively, take advantage of my time, right? And to trust that I would adapt, change, overcome, and, make lemons out of lemonade, right? But, it's America and we only measure in money. So, what does Benton have to show for that? Well, I can think circles around most people. It is what it is. It's to do daily live streams, and this is the highest level of thinking over time that you can find in the so-called truth community, and it's not even close. Because I know, because every once in a while I tune in, and everybody's still on about the same fucking horse shit they were on about 4 years ago, with some exceptions. Right. And that's where people don't understand what is the purpose of art. Well, part of the purpose and function of art is that I can't crystallize and take on a form and be the same 10 years from now without divorcing myself from my own creativity. So in order to remain relevant, Sam Hyde has to be some version of an artist. Has to be. No choice. It's a requirement. Same for me. Like my lifestyle, I had to figure it out creatively. And at a certain point, I really struggled with it. So some of that was, I recognized that maybe not forever, but, there would come a day when I would need to produce as much or more content than I was taking in. See? And that happened, especially during the motel streaming days and if people don't understand what that was, if you go back on my channel and you sort my channel by most popular live streams, go to my live tab and click popular. And it's basically, several months of daily live streams and, probably averaging 6 hours. A lot of them are close to 12 hours. But in order to creatively do that, that's a 24-hour a day undertaking. It's all I was doing. Sleeping, resting, eating, walking, and processing and thinking and creating. Right. That's the spirit of what I am creatively. And I didn't know how that was going to manifest. I didn't know what that was going to look like. Right. And I got whatever I needed to get out of it. I moved on to the next thing, and unlocking levels of spiritual progress and attainment all along the way. And then again, cheer the level up. This is how I know, someone will pretend to be my friend. And then at a certain point, I'm scratching my head going like, well, I'm happy for my friends when they accomplish something. How come people who might claim to be my friends are not happy for me when I've reached this new level, of internal bootstrapping? Well, how come there's no credit? Because this world that makes an enemy of what I am has to treat me as if I'm always guilty of something. Always. To exist in this world in tune with the spirit of what I am, uncovering and walking in the righteous, perfected path that lies within, is to almost without exception always be treated as if what I am is guilty of something. And the trucking company does it too. Right? Well, they don't mean to. They can't help it because the trucking company is of this world. Just what it is. The trucking company absolutely treats me like I might be guilty of something. Hell, I think they turned my fuel card off. Now maybe that's a standard practice when the driver takes home time. I have no idea. They don't tell me anything, but there's a winter storm coming, and I'll probably be out of here before it hits. But yeah, I'd like to fucking fill up the fuel tanks, um, just in case. You never know, in case the fuel supplies get interrupted. I mean, somebody, and this is a $200,000 plus tractor here. It can be fucking damaged and affected by extreme cold. So part of that is, we probably need to keep fuel in it because apparently it has an integrated block heater. Well, that's going to need fuel to keep the fucking batteries charged, right? Now I'll survive because I know how to survive. I've got enough provisions and enough layers of clothing. I'll fucking survive the extreme cold, but without, a running truck. But, that's not the point. Ah, yes, it's all happening. Yeah, further healing in the intestines. So much so, several hours long nightmare last night. And, um, and what I'm learning is that's these repressed emotions, repressed trauma, whatever you want to call it. And, I talk about my shoulder and my back, but that doesn't mean there's not other areas of the body that are affected. And I'm learning just exactly what's been going on with my large intestine, which has probably been quite diseased over time. And if it is healing, as I trust that it is, and I know that it is, but these deep levels of healing is tied up in uh, things I'm not even really probably able to experience in my so-called waking life. So now we have the dream state and the idea of the nightmare. And fortunately, I've trained myself to to assign almost no meaning to the content of my dreams because, some of this stuff is quite disturbing. And based on what I'm feeling now, something's going to happen later on. A movement, right? Some sort of movement, which should be interesting. And this discourse ties into it because more and more I'm reticent to even do a live stream if that movement hasn't happened because it can interfere, but in this case it seems like it's probably going to be helpful. So anyway, that's probably as close to TMI as I would like to get. And no live chat, and this is better, right? The last thing this discourse needs is a bunch of bozo comments, right? And again, if I'm not talking to you, I ain't talking to you, right? And it's not about, it's the fucking high and mighty Benton. Look at how fucking great he is, the great and wonderful Benton. It's like, no, man, I'm the motherfucking man behind the curtain from the Wizard of Oz in a way, or I'm your canary in the coal mine. I will go out, sort of on a fucking solo recon mission. If this was Vietnam or wartime, right? You're always going to have that one fucking weirdo who you're like, hey, where'd Benton go? And then he's gone for fucking a day and a half, and you think he got fucking fragged or fucking deserted, and then he pops back up a day later, and he's gone off on some solo mission that's going to help, strengthen the entire fucking unit, right? And he can't explain to you ahead of time what that's going to look like because he doesn't even fucking know. He just knows how to do it, right? He just knows how to do it. And that's the spirit of what I am, see? And if I'm tapped into all of that and it's inside of each one of you and you're not tapped into it yet, so fucking what? Who cares? It's not a contest. It's not we got to be jealous a bit. What are you talking about? That's just a bunch of nonsense. And again, in a world of lack, and this is what I mean by the lies, It's to process my leveling up, not as, oh, look, Benton's growing and changing and evolving and doing better. No, it's, well, what do you lack in comparison to Benton's achievements? Right? That's bullshit. I don't think that way. Right? I don't think that way. And do you really think if you didn't commit yourself to whatever in the world I'm committed to, and if you didn't work at it every day for 15 years, now I understand there's a fear around maybe you wouldn't do it, but I mean, realistically, of course you would. I mean, let's just, if you don't defeat yourself, if you don't become your own undoing, because if you are what I am is victory. It doesn't know what defeat is. So all it needs to do is apply the processes and it is victory. It's that simple. That's magical. Okay. You want to talk about, oh, words or spells and all of this. Yeah, of course. But that's only that's a little piece of the puzzle. That's neither here nor there. Right. That's fucking Truther 101 nonsense. And it's not nonsense, but that all becomes just another tool in the toolkit. Right. And so when I say my prayer, and I don't even like that word, but on the live stream, because my schedule got so fucked, I was going live and realized I hadn't even done that yet. You know, I don't need a Bible or a book or a holy man to teach. That's my prayer. And that's what I say. And I change it as needed, and I create it and I add to it. It's for me. It works for me. Now, if somebody else wanted to give us this day our daily bread in the early stages of whatever they're on about, yeah, it probably would be better to have some version of that. Yeah, in the beginning stages, sure. But eventually, they're going to need to figure it out for themselves, and they'll have their own version of that. And that's what I find interesting. Where are the people? Where are my fellow warriors? See, I'm in a world of lack. There's a lack of spiritual warrior genius, right? And so, yeah, I'm not a big Jesse Lee Peterson fan, but Jesse Lee is some version of spiritual warrior genius, most likely. You know, Dick Gregory, you know, Sam Hyde, probably. You know, now Sam seems to be in tied up in some sexual perversion, but so was Benton in a way, although in his own prudish, kind of conservative way, certainly. You know, and we've moved beyond that. And I'm back to actually, you know, strongly attracted to the female, but the more traditional female form, just like, oh, a broad with a certain shape, you know, just a normal, what used to be a normal woman, you know. And if you sent me back to 1985, I'm not sure I could, you know, I mean, goodness gracious, just put me around regular women again. Fuck. That'd probably bring me out of retirement. Goodness gracious. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. How long have we been ranting? Oh, almost an hour, 53 minutes. I am curious though, what's in the news before we move on to the hot cell phone talk. And I know that's why folks come to this channel, certainly. That's sarcasm. Let's see. I am considering going to a Hackamania in March, if anybody knows what that is, but I probably won't, but I'm thinking about it. I might. Let's see. Dredge. On my new phone, it's a refurbished Pixel 9 Pro XL. And yeah, I can afford a 10 Pro XL. You know, it was hard for me to bring myself to pay $479 plus tax for this bad boy. ICE detains 5-year-old used as bait. It's like, all right. That's interesting. Screenshot that. If you ever want to do yourself a favor, and unfortunately, a lot of this is lost because most likely I'll never be able to get my old computer set up back. But I like to screenshot a lot of stuff from Drudge Report and then go back and look at it 2 years later, and you can see just how ridiculous this stuff is. So now I look at it in real time and I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be ridiculous in 2 years. So obviously it's ridiculous now. Yeah, see, Americans travel the world only to wind up in Costco. Exactly, and this is the great American export is corporations, right? Fans skip the Louvre and other tourist attractions to buy bulk souvenirs and find out if the hot dog is different. It ranks up right up there with the temples. It's some gay couple from um, says Tommy whoever and Tommy and Danny, a married same-sex married couple. It doesn't say that. I'm adding that. Have made Costco pilgrimages around the world, including this now closed location in Melbourne, Australia. And of course, I'm not allowed to read the article without paying money. So, oh look, Jamie Dimon warns of economic disaster. Well, that's the economy's an economic disaster, Jamie. But you know that. You've always known that. Oh, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon said Trump's proposed 10% cap on credit card rates would be an economic disaster. And why would it be an economic disaster? Because they will no longer be able to give everybody a credit card. Because remember, when you want to lionize and celebrate the 1980s, in 1980, the main difference between today and 1980 is not the cost of living. It's that in 1980, your average American had effectively no access to consumer credit, unlike today when virtually all Americans have access to consumer credit. That's the major economic difference between then and now. If you look at the prices of things, I like to find out, well, how much was four AA batteries in 1980? Guess what? It's the same price as now, adjusted for inflation, or more expensive, depending on where you buy them. It's the same price or more if you convert 1980 money to today's money. Why? Because people have forgotten that inflation was off the motherfucking charts back then. Worse than today. Blah, blah, blah. President Trump gets his way on credit cards. Jamie Dimon predicts chaos, but more on the streets of American town. Exactly. Because these people are addicted to easy, free money. But it's not free money, but it seems like free money. But more on the streets of American towns and in the walls of his own bank. It would be an economic disaster, Diamond said when asked about President Donald Trump's proposed 1 year 10% oh, just for 1 year? Well, I don't even know about this. And I'm not making that up because of our business. We would survive it, by the way. Yeah, see, exactly. We would survive it because remember, they've now removed it from Jamie Dimon's Wikipedia page, but for years you could go to Jamie Dimon's Wikipedia page where he was happily quoted explaining to you, oh, my bank didn't need the TARP funds. We took the TARP funds to benefit the American people because we didn't want the lesser banks to feel bad about needing a bailout. So even though we didn't need the money, we took it more or less to signal to the other banks that, well, it's not going to be a black mark against you because, well, you can rest assured that even, and I forget where he even was during the financial crisis, but maybe Chase. I think maybe he was at JP Morgan Chase at the time. It's like, oh, well, yeah, of course your bank doesn't need it, Jamie. And I'll remind you again, Jamie Dimon is a billionaire and he's only ever worked for other people. He went into business for himself early on. That probably didn't work out. And then he just went to work for other people. He's a fucking billionaire. That's hard to do, but he's done it. He's created nothing. He's provided no value whatsoever, but he's served banks and he's served Moloch's machine so thoroughly that he's a billionaire. What is his net worth? Let's look that up. Jamie Dimon net worth. I could probably just ask the AI, especially now that I'm on a Pixel. 2.8 billion. How you like them apples? In the worst case, you would have to have a drastic reduction of the credit card business, meaning your average American would have to live based on the amount of money they're taking in or below their means, which consumer credit for decades now has allowed them to live beyond their means. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Diamond predicted that if enacted, the cap would strip credit from 80% of Americans. This is what I'm talking about. You come here, I tell you the real shit before it even hits the news. In the 80s, your average American didn't have credit cards because they couldn't be given a credit card. Now we're talking about Trump putting the cap on the interest rates of credit cards, which means you won't be able to have a credit card. Now, some of you have really good credit scores, but how long is that going to be maintained, right? But your average American will not be able to have credit. Or it's like, oh, we've got a good credit score, so here's your $500 limit. That $10,000 limit is a thing of the past. See? Oh, you think you're just going to go buy a new car? Sure, you're not. No, you're not. That's over. You couldn't just go into a dealership in 1980 and fucking just, oh, here's your car loan. Nope. Diamond predicted that if enacted, the cap could strip credit from 80% of Americans. Diamond proposed that the government test the proposal by forcing all the banks in Vermont and Massachusetts to comply. Why? Well, that's where it's number one, mostly white folks, right? Or in the case of Massachusetts, black folks who have access to an actual social safety net. And then see what happens, causing a ripple of laughter through the audience because they know what that means. And then see what happens. The people crying most won't be the credit card companies, he said, adding that those hurt will include restaurants, retailers, travel companies, and municipalities because people will miss their water payments. And because restaurants, a huge portion of their patronage is people paying with credit cards or Afterpay. So that puts Afterpay out of business, I'm assuming. Whatever the president and Congress decide, J.P. Morgan will deal. Oh, he's at J.P. Morgan now. So I don't know, wherever the hell he was in 08, 09. Maybe Citigroup. J.P. Morgan will deal with it, Diamond said. He promised that the bank would provide more extensive analysis of the potential effects and said that he too wants greater affordability. Yeah, sure you do, Jamie. Jamie's a billionaire. He don't give a fuck. Why would he? Diamond struck a largely conciliatory tone when asked about some of Trump's geopolitical moves, immigration and NATO, for example, which he called more qualitative. How's it going to work? What are the pieces? What's their intent? But he said he understands the card issue deeply and has a responsibility of sorts to speak up. Diamond, like many other big bank CEOs and business leaders, has previously said that reducing credit card interest rates could harm customers with lower credit scores. J.P. Morgan CFO warned during the bank's fourth quarter earnings call last week that enacting price controls could make it no longer a good business. Well, and the business will be fine, as he knows. It's the fact that Americans won't be able to get credit, most of them, which is going to be better for them in the long run, but it's going to really fucking hurt in the short run. So when you say, oh, things were better in the 80s, you're right. And a big part of that was your average bozo didn't have consumer credit coming out of their ears. And debt was still considered bad. It was considered bad to owe. It was considered undesirable. Well, what they're talking about now is returning to that. So you can't build a machine and go back to 1980, but you can try to rebuild 1980 today. And guess what? It's going to look like even more of a hellscape, at least in the short run. So surprise, surprise. It's like living in a horror movie. Forecasters warn of catastrophic storm from Texas to the Carolinas. Meanwhile, look who just surprise, surprise happens to be in the right place at the right time yet again. And if these bozos at the company manage to get me planned out today for tomorrow and don't just try to fly by the seat of their pants yet again tomorrow morning, then if they're smart, they'll send me to one of our customers our dedicated account in Massachusetts or Connecticut or wherever the fuck it is. They'll have me take a load they'll have me deadhead to Chicago. And I don't know anything about dispatching, but I'm assuming it'd be deadhead to somewhere around Chicago, get a load from Chicago to Boston, then, cruise over to, our customer in Connecticut and then, get a load out of there early Tuesday morning. Right. And, because we've got deliveries to make in Texas and Oklahoma and such. And, by then the fucking ice will probably have thawed. So now, can they be trusted to figure this out? Of course not. And I know not to tell them because then it'll seem like that's what I want. And, human nature is to sort of withhold, right, what I'm asking for unless there's something in it for them. But then, I have to wait for it to be their idea, right? This is the levels of social engineering required, which is fine. I accept all of this, but why do I accept it? So that maybe I can take a shit every day, right? Maybe two. Like this is why I accept all of this. Like for real. Anyway, that's probably about all the news I can take today. So yeah, that's all the thing apparently. So when I first got this phone and I first set it up, it had Android 15, uh, and it seemed okay. And then I updated it to Android 16. It's like a toy, right? The software, it's like a child's toy now. And meanwhile, I've got an old phone with Android 11, and in some ways, that's the best phone. The battery lasts the longest. You know, the visual look of the software is way better. Now, the thing about the Pixel is just the radios are way better. It's a premium phone. The Motorola is a good value for the price, but the connectivity becomes an issue at certain times. I can already tell that the radios on this is just way better on the Pixel here. The camera, of course, is way better, but that doesn't even really matter to me. And just, of course, it's Google Android. They save the best version for themselves. Part of that is with my Southern accent, the text to speech on the Motorola, it just can't ever completely figure out what I'm saying. Whereby on the Pixel, it understands most of the words that are coming out of my mouth. And the keyboard's way better. It's way easier to type on. So whatever version of the keyboard that they let this is interesting. I just happened to look at YouTube. We got a David Cho short, artists have poor digestion. Well, that's interesting because what's Benton, not even struggling. A lot of my focus every day is on how can I digest this food so it comes out the other end. It's a big fucking deal, man. Artist, I'm creative, I'm expressive, I my truth, I want to be authentic, I want to be vulnerable. Bro, this subject matter, people like you, but then it might sell out. I don't want to sell out. I want to be true. And this balancing action of wanting to be a true artist, wanting to make something that's viable, wanting something. Sorry, y'all probably can't hear this. They're like, oh, you like me now? But there's this video got 1,000 likes, but this one only got 500 likes. So right now, I hurry up. Yeah, exactly. Well, and for those who may not know, Dave Cho was a big inspiration for me, eventually transitioning into a homeless lifestyle because I watched his old Vice show, Thumbs Up, where him and two buddies hitchhiked around the country and rode the rails and, kind of showed the way that this was still possible because every step along the way, people are always like, that's not a thing anymore. And it really is. There's still people still hitchhike. They still ride the rails. I don't know that it will ever just completely die off. It's still a thing. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy to have gotten the phone. I had an interesting experience Tuesday. Um, I had to, in order to retrieve the phone, I had to drive the tractor. I bobtailed into downtown Indianapolis, so now I have to try to find some street parking and park the tractor and make it over to the Whole Foods on foot and try to park somewhere where I won't get a parking ticket or booted or whatever. And so, my only way to really do this is to just sort of study the map ahead of time, the satellite view, and just sort of plot out where can I probably find street parking. And so as I'm parking and I'm there's trees, so I can hear that I'm scratching like the top part of the tractor, which is a brand new truck. So I don't. It's going to get scratched up, but it's a matter of just minimizing that. And I'm sort of just hesitantly, and at the same time, I'm trying to look at. Oh, it's like one of these computerized parking machines. They probably have sensors in the ground. They may even have automated. It may just sometimes now in downtowns the tickets write themselves, like no bullshit. They have the mechanisms in place to actually just give you a ticket without a human being coming and giving the ticket. I'm physically long enough to be in two spaces. I don't know, you know, I have no idea. I'm not going to even bother to try to pay. It's pointless. I'm not going to be there long enough. Is their system even capable of giving a commercial vehicle a ticket? I mean, probably not. I have no idea. Don't know. It's different state. Even some of these systems don't work without a state stuff. And so as I'm doing all of this, and I'm not familiar with the area other than it's downtown of a large city or medium to large size city, and two black fellas, most likely drug addicts, homeless, and I think I think what I'm realizing is there's street parking because it's a pretty decent looking apartment building I'm parking outside of, and there's a corner store up the street. But based on who I saw entering into the building a few minutes later, I think this is like city housing where they're putting, poor folks, Section 8 and homeless, right? And so as I'm hesitantly driving up and looking around, there's these two black fellas who would just love to fluke up on somebody to mug, right? Well, they have no way of knowing I ain't the one, and all they're seeing is somebody who clearly doesn't know where the fuck he is or what he's doing. It's like, yeah, that's because I'm figuring it out in real time. Like, and they probably have no way of understanding that part of that is I'm trying not to damage either the trees. I want to be nice to the locals who might like their trees, and I'm trying not to damage somebody else's truck. And if I didn't give a fuck about the trees, which I really don't, but trying to be responsible. And if it was some old scratched up truck, I probably would have cared. But now I understand, just based on how they're reacting to me, that my body language is sending signals to them that are not consistent with who I am. I'm not really robbable. Like, they have no way of knowing. So as they're walking past me on the street, they both turn their heads and look at me, and I just stare at one. I just make eye contact with. I'm just staring at him, like trying to let him know, like, "Hey, buddy, I've already made y'all. I know exactly what y'all are up to. Don't even think about it." And so, I can tell it's obvious to me they're trying to plot something. And then I'm also trying to decide. It's cold. Do I want to shut the truck off and lock it, or do I want to just leave it running, leave it unlocked, and just, for somebody to even access this thing from the driver's side, parked on the street with cars driving by, it's going to be difficult. They don't know if maybe somebody else is in here. I cover the windows, I close the curtains. So I jump out, and now I'm looking at my phone because I don't even know which direction to walk to the Whole Foods. So I start off like towards the corner store. And then I realize, oh, I'm going the wrong way. And as I start coming back, the fucking black dudes have looped around, and now they're standing to where if I'm dumb enough to walk in between them, they're going to physically close in on me, and then they're going to at least try to see, well, is he armed? Will he defend himself? Is he robbable? Well, I take one look at this, and I'm like, well, I'm not walking in between these bozos. So I go jump back in the truck, open the curtains just enough, and go toot toot on the air horn, just to let them know, like, hey, buddy, I'm here. I see what you're doing. You know, if you think you're going to do something to me, I'll just get in this truck and, you know, maybe run your ass over. Right. At the end of the day, I'm occupying the high ground. You can't attack me. I'm in a fucking armored vehicle. As far like, if this is some version of a battle or a war, it's like, motherfucker, I'm down here in a tank. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, I'll climb up on top of this and fucking jump off wrestling style off the top of the rope if I have to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do to me? You can't attack an enemy who's acquired a higher position. Not with two of you. Like, this is insane. But, you know, obviously they've already gotten their minds that they might be able to have a drug binge if they can take enough money and valuables off of me, right? And so I just get back in the truck, and now I'm just like, so they're looking at me through the windshield, just looking at me. I'm just looking at them like, hey, I guess I'm just going to sit here and look at y'all till you take it on down the street. So finally, one of them's tall, man. He's like 6'4", big old tall dude. And they've already like masked up, you know, they've already concealed. They got their hoods on. They got their masked up, you know, balaclavas or whatever. And gloves, the whole thing. And it's cold enough to justify all of this, certainly. It was well below freezing. And, you know, the smaller one with his fucking ass crack showing, you know, it's one thing about busting a sag and showing the underwear, but it's like, do we really want to see the sorry state of some of these people's underwear? I mean, this looks bad on you, buddy. You know, anyway. You know, I'll go to Macy's and buy some Calvin Klein boxer briefs for fuck's sake if I want to. 3 for $35. I know. They're probably 50 by now. But anyway, so the little one's like, come on, man. And he's trying to he finally drags his friend off towards the corner store. And I shit you not, as I'm starting to get out of the truck, here comes fucking Indianapolis PD. And why is this? Because they've got computers, they've got cameras, they've got microphones. The computer system in real time, it decodes their body language, and it knows that that's what body language people have right before they mug somebody downtown. And the computer has dispatched a fucking radio car who, surprise, surprise, he rides side by side with them. They go to the fucking corner store, and the fucking cop pulls into the corner store parking lot and probably hems them up. I don't know. I'm like, well, fucking now I don't have to worry. And I fucking make my way, you know, special forces fucking boots on the ground in, wherever Black Hawk Down happened, you know, Mogadishu, is that the name of that city? I forget. But yeah, now I'm boots on the ground in Mogadishu or whatever, you know. And so I wanted to maybe take 15 minutes and stock up on some of my groceries at Whole Foods. It's like, well, clearly I got to just get back to the truck as quick as possible and get the fuck out of here. So, you know, I go to the Amazon counter, pick up my packages, and physically fucking ran directly back to the truck. Right. And hopped in and got the fuck out of Dodge. Crazy. But it was laughable. And see, that's a lot of people get robbed just because of the social pressure of like, oh, well, or they've already decided they're walking up the sidewalk. It's like, yeah, I'm walking up the sidewalk too, until two people who are clearly strategically positioning themselves to rob me. It's like, well, I'd have to be insane to put myself in a position to get robbed. Oh, look, a fucking idling tractor that I'm driving. I'll just jump in there and hit the air horn. Right. That's about his chest, basically me beating my chest and saying, what what now, bitches? Right? I mean, hell, I should have just made it rain. I should keep like 100. I should keep like a stack of $1 bills and I could have just made it rain out the fucking passenger window and drove off. Here you go, motherfuckers. This is what I think of y'all, hoes. Here's a shower of $1 bills on you, hoes. Oh man, that's as close as I've been able to get to fake cackling in a while. But yeah, that's America. Oh, well, Democrat, liberal. Okay, sure. Whatever you want to call it, as if that somehow makes it not exist. Oh, Democrat, liberal. Fucking morons. Anyway, I'm starting to get, I'm pissing myself off now, so let's not do that. You're as dumb as they are if you think calling it Democrat and liberal somehow just fucking absolves, as if that somehow absolves a portion of American society, and then it dismisses it. It dismisses its validity by calling it liberal or Democrat. Well, the youth who might actually like Donald Trump apparently prefer Gavin Newsom to J.D. Vance. So I don't know what to tell you. And it's because Newsom mogs Vance apparently. Well, old man Corolla can't shut the fuck up about how, Gavin Newsom likes to sit cross-legged. Guess who doesn't give a flying fuck about that? Young people. They don't care how he sits. Yeah, I understand J.D. Vance don't sit like that. J.D. Vance probably ain't got enough scrote to sit like that. Because when people are like, they're confused as to how can a man cross his legs that way, I'm like, ain't y'all got no scrotum? I can easily sit like that. I've always been able to sit like that if I want to. Now, I generally don't if other people are around. I sit like that in the truck sometimes. Because I hate to be graphic, but my large scrotum means that my junk is beyond whatever area gets pinched if I sit cross-legged. There's nothing in the way. Nothing's being constricted or pinched. I don't even have to adjust. I'm sitting that way right now and leaning forward. Nothing's being smushed. I don't know what to tell you. It's because certain things have enough room to go where they need to go. Right. Again, trying not to be graphic. Now, again, not bragging and, it is what it is, but maybe there's people who, if they try to sit that way, everything's sort of compacted into an area closer to their body and it all gets smashed. Again, that's never been my experience. I don't know what to tell you. Now, maybe this is more of your tighty-whitey crew too, right? I don't know. Tighty-whitey seems to be a little more of a conservative thing, right? Well, like Dick Gregory said, you're sterilizing yourself. Jockey shorts. That's to sterilize you. The sperm, when it's that close, when the testicles are that close to the body, it heats the sperm up too much. It kills them. Okay. There's a reason why the man's got some scrotum. It's for a purpose. Keep the testicles at the proper temperature. See? And then as we age, fellas, that, typically that distance gets increased, right? So at his age, it would be a bad sign if Gavin Newsom couldn't sit that way, I would say, just in my opinion. But again, do you think a 20-year-old gives a flying fuck about it? They don't care. They're feminists, whether you like it or not. Oh, I understand there's still some good old boys down south or whatever that ain't feminists. That's not the point I'm making. That feminism has pervaded all areas of society. Do you think they give a fuck if a man sits? They don't care. They don't care. All they care, but they do care because society is now so looks conscious that it's important to them that J.D. Vance he does not have attractive facial features and he is obese. He just is. He's obese. Now, middle America may not consider him to be that unfit because, oh, look, he went and trained with the Navy SEALs or whatever. Yeah, with his fucking muffin top. And by the way, I also have, I now have some love handles. You know, I'm realizing that the truck driving and the lack of daily walking is not good for me. So we're going into calorie restriction. I'm probably going to some fasting. But anyway, I think I'm out of here. I'm going to eat some fruit. Bye.